Hey, welcome my cosmic brothers and sisters and my earth brothers and sisters. I appreciate you showing up today to Electrical Theology, Esoteric Life Coaching. I am your host, and this is a show about learning esoteric knowledge for just the benefit of becoming enlightened. What does enlightened mean? To have more energy flowing through your cells, which is the divine energy, which is just electricity in my eyes, or divine energy, electricity. They're all the same words, and I interchange them all the time. But for me, we talked about yesterday's video in mediumship, is the Trinity, which for me is energy, which then creates electricity, and the electricity then creates electromagnetism. So for me, that is the holy electrical Trinity. Electricity is just El, Tri, and City. So it's God, the Trinity, and the City. Right? So the City of the Trinity of the One. However you want to, and as you get to watch more of my videos, you see that I break down everything into its smallest matter, into its smallest point, if you will, as well as we can on the internet. But I want to give you the idea, or the parallel, the idea that your mind can break down any thought, any word, into even in what we call the physical world, can be put under a microscope and seen on the highest magnitude. And every time we look at something solid, there's more space. So the bigger microscope we get, the more space we see. So in essence, I'm just showing you and getting you used to that all the individual particles that make up a substance, or all the pieces that make a part, and all the parts that make a whole. So if you think something is whole in your life, you may want to think again, because in this world, nothing's solid. Yes, it may feel, and the reason why it feels solid is because your own vibration is slower than the thing that it is you're hitting or punching or holding. The speed at which the cells are spinning are faster or slower than what it is, much like a fan. If you had a fan in front of you with the blades and it's on slow, real slow, you may be able to go faster and put your finger in between the blades before it hits you. But as you speed that fan up, no matter how many times you try to poke those fan blades spinning on a fast speed, you won't be able to get your finger through it. And so basically that's how life is. Things are just frequency. Some things are fast or slow, and it's about adapting to the frequency, being able to read that frequency of the people, places, and things around you, and then adopt or vibrate on the same resonant frequency or field as them. And basically, this is what tarot class is going to be about, is understanding esoteric tarot, which is, and we'll teach this every Wednesday, and won't be taught traditionally, as you probably see a million ways on the internet. Again, I do it from the electrical perspective, and so each card represents an atom, an ion, a lepton, or any breakdown of an atom or particles you want. We can name them all day long, but we just want to get to understand that each of the major arcana, there's 22, but we're going to deal with the major 20. There's 0, and then there's 21, which equals 22, but the 0 itself is normally a fool or a joker or a jester. And it's represented by a 0, which is the infinity, or a snake eating itself, or any of these symbols in history or mythology that we see, the circle. And this is the Fool. It means a beginning, but also an end, much like the Death card. There's a beginning, there's an end, and then there's a beginning. So the Fool is the one that's basically traveling through the 21 major arcana. The major arcana are archetypes, or types of arc. And these types of arc are just energy. And as we talked about on videos prior to this, on the first 50 or so videos, when you watch some of those, I break this down. We break the particles down as far as we can into that, or thatness. And that came into this. This became Shambhala. Shambhala became hierarchy, and hierarchy became God. And God then created 7 frequencies, and the 7 frequencies then created what we know is a visible light spectrum, or the planet, the plants, animal planets, humans, souls, spirits, gods, the anthropomorphic gods. And so there's a break. So we're just breaking down particles. We took a piece of bread, put it under a microscope, and chemistry, broke it all down, and then we know exactly how much and what ingredients are in that bread. So what we're doing basically with the tarot is just the cards are representing the energy of how things have been formed. what ingredients took place in order for this person's life to come out as it has up to this point. And so the way the cards are spread, or whatever spread we use, is that spread is going to indicate how that person has aligned their ions in order. It makes sense? So each particle is represented by a card. Each atom, and the breakdown of an atom, if you will, or if you're biblical, then it's a breakdown of the atom and all the lineages of Adam, and from Noah all the way through and down to Jesus, if you will. And so basically, the cards are just representations. The cards are just cards. It's just cardboard and plastic or ink and whatever. It's just made of fire, water, earth, and air, dirt. But that being said, because it is made of fire, water, earth, and air, when we do a reading, those cards, as we're mixing them up, are mixing them up in accordance with that person's energy. And so as we throw a spread out, then that person's life is spread out in front of us, and we're able to read it or break it down or be able to talk about the smallest parts and the big picture. Look at it emotionally and just look at all the cards and say, wow, okay, that feels like a heavy energy, or hey, this is very happy energy, or something in between. And basically what these cards are as well are a point of focus. It helps us focus, and it's entertainment for the people in front of us, that they can see these cards instead of just talking to them, because then they may get a little defensive or they may have boundaries up. But if you have this middle ground, this medium of cards in front of them, it's a icebreaker, if you will. And plus, a lot of the decks have real pretty cards. So basically, they're just tools to use to help us understand how someone has put their life in order. It makes sense? So basically what we're going to do is I'm just going to give you an intro like I've been doing so far, but then just sort of give you a quick history. Now I will have a link in the description below. Click on that and it gives you the history of playing cards. I'm not going to go so much into that, but they break it down. The video is really good at breaking down who are the kings, like King David or Alexander the Great. They give all these definitions, so I'm not going to go over it here, but definitely click on the link, and it's just a fun little video I've added so y'all can have a little more understanding of playing cards. But basically, that's what and there's the link there. You'll see it in here, but I'll have a link in the video or in the description for you to click on. Now, I normally teach this class in person, so these are all the things that we get and understand. Esoteric knowledge, how to read, reframing, practicum, business applications, how to make a living, side hustles as we call them, online, how to handle the money part. So this can be a full-time business if you want. I've done it both. It's been fun. I get invited to parties all the time to do readings. So yeah, you can do it or just for side hustle or just do it for fun. It doesn't matter. But for me, it's about bringing the light or the enlightenment to people, or knowledge that they didn't know about. And through this process, it helps people understand themselves. And if you've studied any of my videos before this, it's all about reframing. And so however that person has framed their life, we can help them unframe it or reframe it, right? Just through us reframing the words or talking about the cards that are in front of us. And again, we have, these are all, don't worry so much about this page here, guys. I'm not going to really spend too much time, but it's really understanding the arcana, understanding what the 1 through 10 numbers mean, what verse and reverse, what the universal life patterns are. So there's a lot of active and passive energies in these things. Again, it's basically whatever we want those cards to be is what we'll turn them into. Much like I can write a sentence, and that sentence can turn into a story, a paragraph, a declaration. We can make up whatever we want. Does that make sense? But what we're trying to do is look at how a person's arranged their life and see if we can't help them reframe, or maybe put a card, help them understand why some cards are in the reverse, which is just against the verse or adverse, against the God verse. So it's about us helping them reframe their lives. So the creation of the first playing cards, and we don't have really a history for the tarot. Now the tarot we'll get into is coming from the Torah, or the Kabbalistic learning of Jews or Judaism. And It was an ancient sect or a secret sect within the Judaism or Jewish traditions that's still practiced today, and got a little Hollywood there for a while with Madonna and some other artists. But there actually is, it's based in numbers and science and patterns. Right? So yeah, it may seem mystic, but I'm going to dispel some of those by again explaining that what we're doing is just putting ones and zeros together, or alphabets, and rearranging alphabets and creating a different outcome to our paragraph or our chapter, if you will. So the creation parallels paper. So we had Gutenberg's press, we had the Chinese press that came out. So cards were actually printed around the same time. And it also parallels that of gambling, when gambling started coming in. We'll get into some dates and times because no one really knows the specific origin of the tarot, but we do have the history of cards, card playing that then later turned into tarot. Because the cards also represented a way to give messages in secret without being killed. These are some of the ancient ones that are still alive. These are from around the 1300 AD, I believe. And they were deviations from the Egyptian suites used solely as for card playing. And the suites and the cards have meaning. In history, it used to be for the church, nobility, the middle class, and the peasants. And the church was represented by hearts, nobility by the bells, by church bells. Peasantry were represented by acorns. Sort of similar to what we have today. I'm not going to go into that again. Y'all can do history on this. I'm just showing you that there is a history, and I like presenting the history of stuff so you have a foundation. If you just try to become a musician without having a background in music, odds are you don't know enough of the theory or the respect of the people who came before you. Yeah, you may hit a one-hit wonder or something, but unless you have really deep study in blues and native music and whatnot, then you really don't understand or appreciate the music. Because the more you appreciate that and study in depth, then your music will contain that depth, and that's what makes a good music. All the rock and rollers of my day, from the Stones to Journey to you name it, they all studied the blues, and all their songs are based in the blues or the 1-4-5. That's sort of off here, but we will study the 1-4-5 in the tarot. And again, these are some of the old cards that were printed back in the day. There's some more. Now we want to get into the Ganjifa, or Ganjifa, you'll hear it pronounced. 4 to 8 suites, depending on the variation. So there's 96, about 120 cards. And these are some of these old cards that you had here. Y'all can zoom in if you need to. And so the Ganjifa playing cards, basically it came out of Nepal, Arab, Turkey, Iran, and some of it contains Hindu religious symbols. And the Moon Guide Ganjifa introduces the Emperor Akbar the Great. And again, I don't like reading off of this. I mean, I like just stating it out. But it gives you visuals. And so you had the Dashvantara deck that had the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, which I find interesting. Again, feel free to do any deep study in all this. I already have, but it'd be a long video. This is someone today in modern times making this, but the original ones were actually circle. Playing cards were circles before they were squares. That's an interesting. These are some original that have survived. And so it just basically, this just goes into the 1300s, 1380s. The trump card, Italy, one of the oldest surviving decks, created by Visconti, 1440, had 56 cards, 22 trumps. Again, now we'll understand that in the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah is that there's 22 connections, and so in all that in the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, or the Kabbalah is the Tree of Life, which is Metatron's cube, which is the circles within circles within circles, something y'all have, or the lotus, you'll hear it called that. So the first mention where we sort of now go from playing deck into the mystic, if you will, or the supernatural, or oracles, it was around 1781. It first mentioned the divining system, and it tells you who these guys are. But most of them were Freemasons that were associated with this, or some secret society. And so made the connection of major arcana and the ancient Egyptian book of Thoth. Now, Thoth is also represented to be Jesus, Merlin, a lot of Enoch. Thoth takes on many forms. There's Thoth decks out there. Thoth was sort of the guide to the underworlds underneath the pyramids and throughout the universe, or gateways and portals, like the Golden Gate in California and the Silver Gate that a lot of people don't know that's in California as well. Right? And so, yeah, we just see this history coming in. And so here's where I was talking about the Kabbalah and the Sephiroth and all the connections, and so the Dayat. And I studied this for a while, but again, even that is just something that's too big and too large to even teach to people in my eyes. But these are the 22. So again, we have this energy, this grid. We'll be using the secret grid that I've been bringing up since day 1 or 2 or 3, or later in all my classes, because the grid is what's going to help us understand, because it is reading the origin of that person, just like astrology, and it has origins within when a person was born and the time and everything, and it has an influence, because it's all energy and electricity, remember? Much like wine, when it was produced, wine contains all the fires, the droughts, the diseases, the temperatures, all within that grape during that growing season. And when it was pressed, everything that is in that grape was during that time it was growing. So as you were born, all that energy is part of your ingredients. And by understanding the tree of life a little bit, understanding the secret grid that I teach, these are all, when we lay a spread out, we're laying some of the secret grid or some of the components or ingredients or breakdowns of atoms into and resembling the breakdown and the building blocks of that person's atoms in front of me. It makes sense? All right, so Hebrew alphabet, mid-19th century, Tree of Life Kabbalah, we basically touched on all that. Now, what we see here in about the 1800s, and a lot of this came out of the Age of Enlightenment in the 17s and into the 18s, and then the late 18s, we really had just a boom of inventions and creation and art and poetry and everything. We just had such an amazing time. And we're at that time again. That's what's happening right now. The new cycle that's coming in is a new enlightenment. It may be informational. We can call it computer, biological, electricity. We can call it where transhumanism, where humans and robots get together. I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here to that with each evolution of man or each enlightenment, right, that energy is embedded. And so through our ancestors, we can also tap into, through a reading, our ancestral energy. And I'll show you the ancestral charts as well. So Golden Dawn, if you don't know, Golden Dawn was a secret society, much like Masons or Illuminati. They're still around today, and they have their versions of secret. I'm not going to go into them. Y'all can look that up or become a part of them. But they teach ancient esoteric knowledge as well. Me, I just give it out free for the most part. And this is the Rider-Waite. And so the Hermetic Order was in around 1880. You had McGregor and Westcott and Woodman. I think that's Woodman, but Woodman. These guys were sort of the founders or the rulers, if you will, much like in Masons, the 33rds and the higher. And yes, there are higher than 33, because these are just degrees. We'll get into that at another time in another class. But the major influence in the meanings of the card are mixed with mystical tarot or the Torah. So the tarot just basically gets its name from the Torah. The Tree of Life, Freemasons, and alchemy. And the person, it was to be a true magician or a true teacher of science and math. Right? And so the two members that were influential in the Golden Dawn was A.E. Waite and the artist Pamela This was the interpreter of the knowledge and the artist that we see today. The Rider-Waite deck is what we call this. Two members, Waite and artist Pamela Coleman Smith, broke away. And then this is the first publication, the true publication, what they call the true publication, in 1909. And so the Rider-Waite deck revolutionized sort of because they put pictures on the all the cards. In the old days, the old cards didn't have pictures, much like your playing cards today don't really have pictures, it just has the numbers. And so this was a big step forward to bring in the ancient and esoteric symbolism into the cards right in front of people. And there's the Thoth deck. Now, Aleister Crowley was a member of the Golden Dawn, but he interpreted the deck differently than Rider and Waite. And so, because Aleister Crowley, a quick history there is Aleister Crowley was a student of H.P. Lovecraft. And H.P. Lovecraft, if you don't know that, do a lot of study. H.P. Lovecraft was a horror fiction writer back in the day. And his books and movies and everything are still around today because they were so powerful of what he was able to describe. But anyway, long story short, Aleister Crowley then went on to, or I should put it this way, Anton Szandor LaVey was sort of the student of Aleister Crowley's practice. And Aleister Crowley was a lot into sex magic and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. He got kicked out of a bunch of places, but he was a pretty crazy dude from the history I've read. But going forward, that worked from H.P. Lovecraft to Aleister Crowley and all the way into Anton Szandor LaVey. Anton Szandor LaVey then created the Church of Satanism out in California. And so when you see the Eagles Hotel California album, up in the upper left-hand corner is standing Anton up there. And that's not to say any of this is satanic or anything. There is no devil in the craft. Right? And then craft just has the word art. And so there's no evil in the art. Again, electricity is just electricity. Stick your finger in the socket. Because you're illiterate, you're going to think a demon's biting you on the other end of that socket. Right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I dispel all the ridiculousness around evils and all this type stuff. Right? If you don't know a certain group of people, if you were a nice closed-in American growing up in a small church in a small town, and then you're invited to go see a rugby game over in England or somewhere, and the crowds are screaming and they're fighting, the hoodlums are beating each other up, the hooligans are beating each other up. You may think, oh my God, these people are evil, I'm in hell. But it's not, it's just a certain way people are. But we don't judge them to be one or the other because we don't have enough knowledge of why people do what they do. And if you think you are or they are evil, then you may need to check in on why you think you're evil. Right? So Aleister Crowley was a rival to Rider and Waite, like we talked about. And Aleister Crowley was Ordo Templi Orientalis. And the artist for his deck was Frida Harris. Beautiful artwork, as you can see here. And that was around 1969, or not published until 1969. So yeah, interesting history. Crowley deck. This is some of them from the Crowley deck. And these are all the people I give credit to. Now this will be the second class that we go into, part 2. I'm not going to go into it today, but I'll give you a little preview. We'll talk about the major arcana, and then we'll talk about the minors and the theories. And again, we'll get into reading and then how to create a living. We'll get into the history, the septivum, dispelling the myth, sort of what I just did there, that there is no devil in any of this stuff. It's just cards, it's plastic. But from an esoteric standpoint, everything is made up of energy, which is that, which stepped down a few times and it becomes God. And then that God is just the ions organized and put together to create or materialize from the supernatural to the natural, us. So we have been arranged in a certain pattern with ions. And so the cards, when you're in tune and opened up to the universe, and you're able to open some of these veils I've talked about in past videos, then we have a panoptic vision of their electrical matrix, that allows us to see how that person has formed their physical life and all that it's attracting or repelling, because we can see it on the electrical level. And so it's like a 3D, 5D image, if you will. We can see what, it's sort of like DNA. If there's something happening in a person, we can go in now, look at a genetic marker, take that marker out and put in a new one. So with readings, we can take a card that's out in one position, talk about it, reframe it, have that person understand it, and then we can rearrange the atoms, if you will, in their tarot 1s and 0 reading. And then that way they have a better understanding of how to think differently, which then brings in and magnetically attracts new people, places, and things, and repels old people, places, and things, right? So that's what we'll do today, guys. That's all I'm going to get in today. This video is already long enough, but we will get into part 2. We got a lot of fun stuff. All right. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below, and then make sure you hit on that link about the history of playing cards. And please like, subscribe, get the algorithms going, guys. Share this information with people, and we'll be doing this every Wednesday. Tarot is every Wednesday, and the mediumship's every Tuesday. Realms of Expanding Consciousness or life cycles and 369s are all on Thursday, and then Friday is manifesting. Right? Because once we understand tarot, we're going to put energy in order, which then allows us to manifest what we want here on Earth or in this matrix. Cool? All right, guys. Appreciate you hanging out with me and watching, and love each and every one of you. And I look forward to seeing you next time.